Hey guys, welcome to day 69 of the Babylonian Plan. Today, we'll be reading Judges 1 through 3, Luke 20, and Psalm 16. If you need to read more about this plan, visit the High Quality Gospel website with a link in the description of the episode and the podcast. Please leave a like and follow the podcast to stay up to date with new episodes. Now, let's begin with reading Judges 1. After the death of Joshua, the Israelites inquired of the Lord, "Who will be the first to fight for us against the Canaanites?" The Lord answered, "Judah is to go. I have handed over the land to him." Judah said to his brother Simeon, "Come with me to my allotted territory, and let's fight against the Canaanites. I will also go with you, your allotted territory." So Simeon went with him. When Judah attacked, the Lord handed the Canaanites and Perizzites over to them. They struck down 10,000 men in Bezek. They found Adoni-Bezek in Bezek, fought against him, and struck down the Canaanites and Perizzites. When Adoni-Bezek fled and pursued him, caught him, and cut off his thumbs and big toes. Adoni-Bezek said, 70 kings with their thumbs and big toes cut off used to pick up scraps under my table. God has repaid me for what I have done." They brought him to Jerusalem, and he died there. The men of Judah fought against Jerusalem, captured it, and put it to the sword, and set the city on fire. Afterward, the men of Judah marched down to fight against the Canaanites who were living in the hill country, in the Negev, and the Judean foothills. Judah also marched against the Canaanites who were living in Hebron. Hebron was formerly named Kiriath Arba. They struck down Sheshai, Ammon, and Talmai. From there they marched against the residents of Debir. Debir was formerly named Kiriath Sefer. Caleb said, "Whoever attacks and captures Kiriath Sefer, I will give my daughter Akshah to him as a wife." So Othniel, son of Kenaz, Caleb's youngest brother, captured it, and Caleb gave his daughter Akshah to him and his wife. When she arrived, she persuaded Othniel to ask her father for a field. As she got off her donkey, Caleb asked her, "What do you want?" She answered him, "Give me a blessing, since you have given me the land in the Negev. Give me springs also." So Caleb gave her both the upper and lower springs. The descendants of the Kenite, Moses' father-in-law, had gone up with the men of Judah from the city of palms to the wilderness of Judah, which was in the Negev of Arad. They went to live among the people. Judah went with his brother Simeon, struck the Canaanites who were living in Zephath, and completely destroyed the town. So they named the town Hormah. Judah captured Gaza and its territory, Ashkelon and its territory, and Ekron and its territory. The Lord was with Judah and enabled them to take possession of the hill country. But they could not drive out the people who were living in the plain, because those people had iron chariots. Judah gave Hebron to Caleb, just as Moses had promised. Then Caleb drove out the 3 sons of Anak who lived there. At the time, the Benjaminites did not drive out the Jebusites who were living in Jerusalem. The Jebusites have lived among the Benjaminites in Jerusalem to this day. The house of Joseph also attacked Bethel, and the Lord was with them. They sent spies to Bethel. The town was formerly named Luz. The spies saw a man coming out of the town and said to him, "Please show us how to get into town, and we will show you kindness." When he showed them the way to town, they put the town to the sword, but released the man and his entire family. Then the man went to the land of the Hittites, built a town, and named it Luz. That its name still today. At the time, Manasseh failed to take possession of Beth-shean and Tanakh and their surrounding villages, or the residents of Dor, Ibleam, and Megiddo and their surrounding villages. The Canaanites were determined to stay in this land. When Israel became stronger, they made the Canaanites serve as forced labor, but never drove them out completely. At that time, Ephraim failed to drive out the Canaanites who were living in Gezer, so the Canaanites have lived among them in Gezer. Zebulun failed to drive out the residents of Kitron, or the residents of Nahalol, so the Canaanites lived among them and served as forced labor. Asher failed to drive out the residents of Akko, or of Sidon, or Alab, Akzib, Helbah, Afik, or Rehob. The Asherites lived among the Canaanites who were living in the land, because they failed to drive them out. Naphtali did not drive out the residents of Beth Shemesh, or the residents of Beth Anath. They lived among the Canaanites who were living in the land, but the residents of Beth Shemesh and Beth Anath served as their forced labor. The Amorites forced the Danites into the hill country and did not allow them to go down into the valley. The Amorites were determined to stay in Har Herez, Aijalon, and Shalabim. When the house of Joseph got the upper hand, the Amorites were made to serve as forced labor. The territory of the Amorites extended from the Scorpion's Ascent, that is, from Selah upward. The angel of the Lord went up to Gilgal to Bochim and said, I brought you out of Egypt and led you to the land I had promised to your ancestors. I also said, I will never break my covenant with you. You are not to make a covenant with the inhabitants of this land. You are to tear down their altars, but you have not obeyed me. What have you done? Therefore I now say, I will not drive out these people before you. They will be thorns in your sides, and their gods will be a trap for you. When the angel of the Lord had spoken these words to all the Israelites, the people wept loudly. So they named that place Bochim and offered sacrifices there to the Lord. Previously, when Joshua had sent the people away, the Israelites had gone to take possession of the land, each to his own inheritance. The people worshipped the Lord throughout Joshua's lifetime and during the lifetimes of the elders who outlived Joshua. They had sent all the Lord's great works he had done for Israel. Joshua son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110. They buried him in the territory of his inheritance in Timnath-Herez, in the hill country of Ephraim, north of Mount Gash. That whole generation was also gathered to their ancestors. After them another generation rose up who did not know the Lord or the works he had done for Israel. The Israelites did what was evil in the Lord's sight. They worshipped the Baals and abandoned the Lord, the God of their ancestors, who had brought them out of Egypt. They followed other gods from their surrounding peoples and bowed down to them. They angered the Lord, for they abandoned him and worshipped Baal and the Ashtaroths. The Lord's anger burned against Israel, and he handed them over to the marauders who raided them. He sold them to the enemies around them, and they could no longer resist their enemies. Whenever the Israelites went out, the Lord was against them and brought disaster on them, just as he had promised and sworn to them. So they suffered greatly. The Lord raised up judges who saved them from the power of their marauders, but they did not listen to their judges. Instead, they prostituted themselves with other gods, bowing down to them. They quickly turned from the way of their ancestors, who had walked in obedience to the Lord's commands. They did not do as their ancestors did. Whenever the Lord raised up a judge for the Israelites, the Lord was with him and saved the people from the power of their enemies, while the judge was still alive. The Lord was moved to pity whenever they groaned because of those who were oppressing and afflicting them. Whenever the judge died, the Israelites would act even more corruptly than their ancestors, following the other gods to serve them and bow and worship to them. They did not turn from their evil practices or their obstinate ways. The Lord's anger burned against Israel, and he declared, because this nation has violated my covenant that I made with their ancestors and disobeyed me, I will no longer drive out before them any of the nations Joshua left when he died. I did this to test Israel and to see whether or not they would keep the Lord's way, by walking in it, as their ancestors had. The Lord left these nations and did not drive them out immediately. He did not hand them over to Joshua. These are the nations the Lord left in order to test all those in Israel who had experienced none of the wars in Canaan. This was to teach the future generations of the Israelites how to fight in battle, especially those who had not fought before. These nations included the 5 rulers of the Philistines and all of the Canaanites, the Sidonians, and the Hivites who lived in the Lebanese mountains from Mount Baal Hermon as far as the entrance to Hamath. The Lord left them to test Israel to determine if they would keep the Lord's commands he had given their ancestors through Moses. But they settled among the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. The Israelites took their daughters as wives for themselves, gave their own daughters to their sons, and worshipped their gods. The Israelites did what was evil in the Lord's sight. They forgot the Lord their God, and worshipped the Baals and the Asherahs. The Lord's anger burned against Israel, and he sold them to King Cushan Rishathaim of Aram Naharaim, and the Israelites served him 8 years. The Israelites cried out to the Lord, so the Lord raised up Othniel, son of Kenaz, Caleb's youngest brother, as a deliverer to save the Israelites. The Spirit of the Lord came on him, and he judged Israel. Othniel went out to battle, and the Lord handed over King Cushan Rishathaim of Aram to him, so that Othniel overpowered him. Then the land had peace for 40 years, and Othniel, son of Kenaz, died. The Israelites again did what was evil in the Lord's sight. He gave King Eglon of Moab power over Israel, because they had done what was evil in the Lord's sight. After Eglon convinced the Ammonites and the Amalekites to join forces with him, he attacked and defeated Israel and took possession of the city palms. The Israelites served King Eglon of Moab 18 years. Then the Israelites cried out to the Lord, and he raised up Ehud son of Gerah, a left-handed Benjaminite, as a deliverer for them. The Israelites sent him with the tribute for King Eglon of Moab. Ehud made himself a double-edged sword 18 inches long. He strapped it to his right thigh under his clothes, and brought the tribute to King Eglon of Moab, who was an extremely fat man. When Ehud had finished presenting the tribute, he dismissed the people who had carried it. At the carved images near Gilgal, he returned and said, "King Eglon, I have a secret message for you." The king said, "Silence," and all his attendants left him. Then Ehud approached him while he was sitting alone in his upstairs room where it was cool. Ehud said, "I have a message from God for you." And the king stood up from his throne. Ehud reached with his left hand, took the sword from his right thigh, and plunged it into Eglon's belly. Even the handle went in after the blade, and Eglon's fat closed in over it, so that Ehud did not withdraw the sword from his belly, and the waist came out. Ehud escaped by the way of the porch, closing and locking the doors of the upstairs room behind him. Ehud was gone when Eglon's servants came in. They looked and found the doors of the upstairs room locked, and thought he was relieving himself in the cool room. The servants waited until they became embarrassed and saw that he had still not opened the doors of the upstairs room. So they took the key and opened the doors, and there was their lord lying dead on the floor. Ehud escaped while the servants waited. He passed the Jordan near the carved images and reached Seirah. After he arrived, he sounded the trumpet throughout the hill country of Ephraim. The Israelites came down with him from the hill country, and he became their leader. He told them, "Follow me, because the Lord has handed over your enemies, the Moabites, to you." So they followed him, captured the fords of the Jordan leading to Moab, and did not allow anyone to cross over. At that time they struck down about 10,000 Moabites, all stout and able-bodied men. None of them escaped. Moab became subject to Israel that day, and the land had peace for 80 years. After Ehud, Shamgar, son of Anath, became judge. He also delivered Israel, striking down 600 Philistines with a cattle prod. Now we read Luke 20. One day, as he was teaching the people in the temple and proclaiming the good news, the chief priests and the scribes with the elders came and said to him, "Tell us, by what authority are you doing these things? Who is it who gave you this authority?" He answered them, "I will also ask you a question. Tell me, was the baptism of John from heaven or of human origin?" They discussed amongst themselves. If we say from heaven, he will say, "Why didn't you believe him?" But if we say of human origin, all the people will stone us, because they are convinced that John was a prophet. So they answered, and they said they did not know his origin. And Jesus said to them, "Neither will I tell you by what authority I do these things." Now he began to tell the people in this parable. A man planted a vineyard, leased it to its tenant farmers, and went away for a long time. At harvest time he had sent a servant to the farmers so that they might give him some fruit from the vineyard. But the farmers beat him and sent him away empty-handed. He sent yet another servant, but they beat that one too, treated him shamefully, and sent him away empty-handed. And he sent yet a third, but they wounded this one too and threw him out. Then the owner of the vineyard said, "What should I do? I will send my beloved son. Perhaps they will respect him." But when the tenant farmers saw him, they discussed it among themselves and said, "This is the heir. Let's kill him, so that the inheritance will be ours." So they threw him out of the vineyard and killed him. What then will the owner of the vineyard do then? He will come and kill those farmers and give the vineyard to others. But when they heard this, they said, "That must never happen." But he looked at them and said, "Then what is the meaning of this scripture? The stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. Everyone who falls on that stone will be broken to pieces, but on whomever it falls, it will shatter him." Then the scribes and the chief priests looked for a way to get their hands on him that very hour, because they knew he had told this parable against them, but they feared the people. They watched closely and sent spies who pretended to be righteous, so that they could catch him in what he said, to hand him over to the governor's rule and authority. They questioned him, "Teacher, we know that you speak and teach correctly, and you don't show partiality, but teach truthfully the way of God. Is it lawful for us to pay taxes to Caesar or not?" But detecting their craftiness, he said to them, "Show me a denarius. Whose image and inscription does it have?" "Caesar's," they said. "Well then," he told them, Give to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's." They were not able to catch him in what he said in public, and being amazed at his answer, they became silent. Some of the Sadducees, who say there is no resurrection, came up and questioned him. "Teacher, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother has a wife and dies childless, his brother should take the wife and produce offspring for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers. The first took a wife and died without children. Also the second and the third took her. In the same way, all 7 died and left no children. Finally, the woman died too. In the resurrection, therefore, whose wife will the woman be? For all 7 had married her." Jesus told them, "The children of this age marry, and are given in marriage. But those who are counted worthy to take part in that age and in the resurrection from the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage, for they can no longer die, because they are like angels and are children of God, since they are children of the resurrection." Moses even indicated in the passage about the burning bush that the dead are raised, where he calls the Lord the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but of the living, because all are living to him. Some of the scribes answered, "Teacher, you have spoken well," and they no longer dared to ask him anything. Then he said to them, "How can they say that the Messiah is the son of David? For David himself says in the book of Psalms, 'The Lord declared to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool.' David calls him Lord. How then can the Messiah be his son?" While all the people were listening, he said to his disciples, "Beware of the scribes who want to go around in long robes and who love greetings in the marketplaces, the best seats in the synagogues, and the places of honor at banquets. They devour widows' houses and say long prayers, just for show. These will receive harsher judgment." Now we read Psalm 16. "Protect me, God, for I take refuge in you. I said to the Lord, 'You are my Lord. I have nothing good besides you.' As for the holy people who are in the land, they are the noble ones. All my delight is in them. The sorrows of those who take another god for themselves will multiply. I will not pour out their drink offerings of blood, and I will not speak their names with my lips. Lord, you are my portion and my cup of blessing. You hold my future. The boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Indeed, I have a beautiful inheritance. I will bless the Lord who counsels me, even at night when my thoughts trouble me. I will also always let the Lord guide me, because he is my right hand. I will not be shaken. Therefore my heart is glad, and my whole being rejoices. My body also rests securely, for you will not abandon me in Sheol. You will not allow your faithful one to see decay. You reveal the path of life to me. In your presence is abundant joy. At your right hand are eternal pleasures." On day 68, we finished the book of Joshua, detailing the conquest of the Promised Land. Jesus arrived in Jerusalem, and he discussed what we should do while we wait for his return. Today we begin Judges. Judges is a book about the years between the conquest and the anointing of a king. It was during this time Israel constantly disobeyed God. God handed them over to their enemies every time they disobeyed. He would then send a judge to save Israel. This book details how easily corrupted the people are. This began with Israel not destroying the altars and idols of the inhabitants, which caused Israel to worship other gods, and not the one true God. How were they able to be so easily corrupted? Not only did they allow the temptations to stay in Israel, but also a new generation came up. This new generation was not properly raised in the Lord, and they did not witness what God has done. It's the combination of those two that bring out the destruction of Israel. It somewhat teaches us about how to raise our next generation. When generations are not taught properly and are given new temptations, they will fall away. Which is more common? Children falling away from what their parents believe and taught them, or parents falling away from what their children believe and taught them. It's always the next generation that leaves the previous one's belief. The next generation will always be at risk, especially when they are not raised properly. Just look at what's happening in the modern day. Less and less children are being brought up in God, and so they are leaving God. Either they're not being brought up entirely, or they are leaving from what they were taught. Even if they are taught properly, they're still threatening to leave the faith because of all the temptations that are allowed to happen in the world. We can keep children inside the church all we want, but they're not always going to be inside the church. They're always going to go out to the world and be tempted. They will forget God and follow other idols. And so it is up to us, the current generation, to raise them up in God. In Luke, Jesus does a variety of teachings, and different scribes and spies try to trap him in his teaching. So they have a reason to get rid of him. But they could not find anything. Instead, they were amazed at his teaching. First, they want to know by whose authority he speaks for. This is a trap. For if he says God's authority, they will say he's blasphemous. And if he says by his own authority, they will claim he's just crazy and a liar, just a man. So Jesus asked them a question they could not answer. For the people loved John and believed he was a prophet. And they have not affirmed his teachings. Jesus then tells them he will not answer. Now, a lot of us wanted him to answer, but in truth, this was the best way to approach the situation. Jesus proved that the scribes were liars and tricksters, and no matter what he said, it will be taken and twisted to fit their agenda. So if Jesus told the truth, meaning God's authority because he is God, they would take it and destroy him by using that. If he said by his own authority, which is also true, if he said by his own authority, then yeah, they would just call him crazy. So this was the best situation. Second, Jesus tells the parable of the vineyard owner. This was essentially a summary of Israel's history with God. God has sent prophet after prophet to teach the people so that they can know God. But they keep refusing and pushing them aside. Just look at Moses, Joshua, and what we've read in Judges. The people do not care or listen. And so after so many, God sent his son, Jesus. And so the question is, we should respect his son, right? If we don't respect God, we should respect his son, right? And listen to him? No. The people kill him just as they will kill Jesus. Jesus will be rejected, and God will have to destroy those who reject his son. The scribes believed they were owed the kingdom, but they reject God and his son and will not receive. This is the same way for us. If we believe we are owed the kingdom, then we will reject who God is and what he's done. We will reject his authority over our lives. And so, we will be rejected in the end. Third, Jesus tells the people to pay their taxes, something they did not want to hear, but it is truthful. Give to God what belongs to God and submit to authority. Now, this is also controversial today, even. Lastly, Jesus explains the resurrection and proves that there will be a resurrection. In Psalm, we saw confidence in God and how confident David was in God, for he wrote the psalm, and how confident we should all be. So take his psalm as a helping tool when you feel despair, or when you feel God is not enough. God is enough. He is our portion. Our hearts should be glad. His presence is abundant joy, just as the psalm said. Thank you for joining in the reading and understanding of these chapters, and let us all be vigilant in continuing this reading. Please share, like, follow, or whatever you can do to help us reach more people with the Bible reading. Please also check out the High Quality Gospel website for more information and a couple of store items. Thank you, and keep learning.